God puts us in nations, in places, not by mistake, but to do a job. What if we opened our eyes to the needs of our colleagues, of our leaders, of our subordinates, and we were a priest on their behalf? Well, welcome to the Repurposing Business Podcast. My name is Brett Johnson, and I'm here on the road in South Africa. As promised, I'll be bringing you a month of miracles. And it's my privilege to be with Danny de Wit. And Danny, when did we meet?
2004.
Yeah, 2004. And at that stage, you had several businesses you were doing. You had a guest house up north of here in the Northern Cape. As I recall, you had an apartment block close to the University of Cape Town, and you were doing stuff with that, and some other property and related investments. Is that right?
That's correct. It's still the case.
Still the case. Great. And here we are in a great location, De Leefboom. What's the story of this place?
Well, Brett, you know, God's big on property. He needs a launching platform. You know, God doesn't do anything in clouds, it seems. So God enjoys anything tangible, it seems. Of course, and from there He starts things. So when our lives were repurposed way back, and of course our businesses soon followed, we needed a headquarters, if you will. We needed a place from where to launch our new convictions. Yeah. And so at the time we were convinced that the Lord has called us into the hospitality industry. Yeah. And we went scouting for a suitable property, and 4 years of hard labor, we stumbled across this place, and we've been living here since 2010.
Great. So it's what they call a stadplaas, like a city farm, and it's got vineyards, and you've had wine processing, but now you do many things on this location, so it really has become a base for multiple expressions. Danny, what I'd like to ask you about as we talk about the concept of marketplace miracles, and we know that God validates His interest in the marketplace through signs and wonders, often among people who don't know Him, in fact most often. And you've seen your fair share of miracles in your different business entities, and I wonder if we could unpack some of those, maybe starting a bit with your guest house up in Norris North from here. You went through quite a journey to see that land restored, and in the course of that there were some miracles. Tell us a bit about that.
Look, I think miracles comes in all shapes and forms. Brett, you'll know this, and it's been our experience. Again, you know, God uses His prerogative. He can use miracles the way He chooses fit. But in our case, it seems to have served a motivational purpose. Okay. It seemed to have, when all else failed, something happened that triggered us and enabled us to go and move into the next stage. Okay. Basically confirming that we heard from Him, that we understood our purpose correctly. Yeah. And over the years, there have been numerous occasions where that has happened. I think the story that you know best is what happened in our family farm up north. Where we started to, God prompted me to start praying for the land and for Him to reveal to me the sins that's been committed on that property in years gone by. And
which, by the way, is true of almost any property. It's not something unique to your property, but you had to think about it because every location, there's things that happen for good or for bad, and we're called to redeem and to restore. So,
that's absolutely correct. Although I didn't know of it at the time, it wasn't part of my spiritual upbringing to know that God places such a big emphasis on exactly that, the redemption of land. I started off by saying that God seemingly needs earthly launch pads. So, and He wants those cleared out, and He wants those to be in good standing with Him. So that's how it started with us, and I just had this urge to pray for God to reveal that, and which I then did for 4 years running without seeing any results. But then, as if from nowhere, the revelations started happening, and we discovered. I was got a phone call from a guy who said there was a did I know that there was a murder committed on this farm 100 years before. And we used that information and to plead with God for forgiveness and not. See, sometimes you pray about things that you don't understand. You don't have it doesn't quite fit into your theological framework.
Right.
And you pray because that's what you feel called to do. You know, it's one of the definitions I've heard given of intercessory prayer. But you talk to God about that which He told you to talk to Him about, whether that fits into your framework or not. So that's exactly what I did at the time. And as if from nowhere, 4 years into this, things started happening, and people they were just confronted with their own sin from nowhere. You know, one guy sat by himself in one of the houses on the farm, and one night, without anybody being on the property, God moved into the room, he said to me. And we saw restoration on just about every phase, the economical side, the rainfall, even now with severe drought. And this is 20 years ago I'm talking about. But even as recently as a number of months ago, where that area was drought-stricken, we still got our fair share of rainfall. And the tourists kept on coming. You know, the tourist season in that part of the world is in August, because that's when the flowers are. And it just so worked out, again, you know, coincidence, God's way of remaining unanimous. So the lockdown, the hard lockdown, closed on the 3rd of August, and then on the 6th of August, the flower season opened up, and we were just flooded by guests. And we saw, this is last year, we saw our busiest flower season in history. in the middle of COVID, you know, where other guest houses and properties similar to ours were closing down. The Lord just gave us favor, you know. So those to me are marketplace place miracles.
So you went back, you looked at historical things that happened before your time. I mean, you're not quite 100, and so long before your time. And you said, but as a steward of the land, I have to deal with the history, I have to pray over what happened, and the consequences. You saw physical outworking in the flora and fauna, in the deer and the wildlife as well, right? So of course, what God promises, you know, when true redemption takes place, is not just mankind as a species that benefits. It's everything and everyone. And we've seen that happen in that context. We've seen the same thing happen here again, if you want me to jump to here. Now, we didn't move here because we wanted to start a school. That was not the motivation why we came here. But the Lord has that told us that He wants us involved in the grooming of the new generation Christian leaders. And my background, as you know, is also a pulpit minister. And the misfit between me and the pulpit ministry that I was part of was this, revolved around the question: how are we grooming the next generation? You know, how are we discipling? And realizing my best effort didn't seem to have an impact on the way people lived. So the discipling process was not happening from the pulpit. So we knew that we were called for a new generation of Christian leader, whatever that meant. And at first we thought it's going to be, the Lord's going to use the hospitality platform. Because typically that is, you need a platform of sorts to penetrate, to earn the right to speak. In the modern day in particular, people won't just listen to you because you sound nice, you know, you are well articulate in what you say. They want to see the lifestyle that backs up those words. So, and we wanted to set ourselves up for that to happen, to build community. Typically, community will follow when that happens. People will go where they feel safe, and community will. And that's your story, you know. You know, I'm preaching to the converted, I know. But community is always a sign of people doing the right thing, you know, for the right reason. So that's what happened to us. We came here. We wanted to build community. At the time, we thought the hospitality platform was the one that the Lord has reserved for us. And it soon turned out that not just the hospitality as an industry, but school, especially primary
pre-primary schools, early childhood development. My wife's got a background in that, and my theology and my business seem to dovetail with that fairly well. So that saw us move into a new venture.
Yeah.
We didn't close down the hospitality, but we added to it.
Right.
So we went the route of convergence. Guess where I was taught that.
Yeah.
You know, these things do play off one another, and there's a positive interaction. And that's, of course, our kids came real late in life, for me at least. And they came around. Their mom is an occupational therapist, and the Lord used that powerfully to fire the early shots in us starting a preschool and now a primary school here on the farm. So that's one thing we do, and it's, if you look around, you'll see it's the primary thing we do. But still, that's not where the financial much of the financial input comes from. I'm also involved in real estate, so we own and manage buildings, property, and so that's part of what we do here. We still run a small B&B, as you know, and we also have a small medical center here. So these are, believe it or not, they're intertwined. They feed on one another, and it is an ecosystem. And I love the way the Lord has used that in the past, and to see, shall I call them marketplace miracles, when God does stuff unexpectedly and in ways that cannot be understood or cannot be defined at the time. And sometimes these things are so well camouflaged that at first it looks like a curse. Like COVID-19.
So you have to be alert to the miracles, otherwise you might miss them.
I think yes and no. I think one must be very careful to go miracle hunting. Because God doesn't give us a right to them. We don't have a right to miracles. We have a right to be called sons of the Father, which to me interprets to mean that we have a right to get God's backing, provided we are obedient.
Right.
And miracles oftentimes is what He uses in that way. I can tell many stories of how unannounced and at a critical juncture in a cash flow situation, something will happen. We were only able to build the school, to construct the school and to start the school because of a contract that we got with one of our buildings that is unheard of in the industry. To this day, when people hear of how favorable that is, it is quite unbelievable. Quite to this day.
And that underlined what you felt God had told you to do.
I think I started off by saying, God has used miracles to affirm stuff. So at first, for me at least, God whispers, He doesn't shout. So I would have a hunch more than an edible voice. I've never heard those. But I'll have a hunch that God wants me to move in a certain direction.
Right.
And then I will do so incrementally. I will do so small steps at a time. A low-cost probe type of thing. And I will be very mindful and very observant as to what are the impulses that I'm getting from the spiritual side in so doing. And sometimes you have to wait for a while. But in the case of the school, we got almost 2 messages coming our way almost from the day one. And the one was from the next door neighbors who were up in arms against what we were doing. A Christian school in a town that's renowned for good schools, Christian national schools, And yet here we are. This is what we feel God calling us to do. So a lot of resistance from that side, but also support from God on the other end. And how he, looking back now, how He has diffused. We have 32. You mentioned just now it's a city farm. So it's a little farm, small holding, 40 hectares. What is that? Roughly 80 acres. Sorry, should I say? And we've got 32 neighbors. So if they decide to go against you, they can be quite a choir to contend with.
Yeah.
And how the Lord has sort of diffused their arguments and split them apart, you know, and beautiful stories to be told, and you know, they are now our friends and some of our keenest supporters and what we try to do here.
Yeah.
And besides them sending their kids here, so that also helps. So to see God bring unity, to see Him diffuse the plans of the enemy,
Right.
you know, typically based on lies and poor information, and to see God fill up cash supplies. I mean, you can imagine the school is a cash industry. You need a lot of cash to meet your overheads. And how God has found ways to meet those. And
what's been one of the most significant that you remember pops to mind?
I think there's two. One of which, in fact, both of them during COVID. So COVID came, hard lockdown in South Africa meant that nobody used to exit his property, basically. All the kids were sent home for an indefinite period. And many people lost their jobs. Whilst all that was happening, we were thinking, you know, how on earth is this school of ours going to survive? Parents are going to stop paying like they were in the surrounding schools, and because they've lost their jobs, they lost their income. So why would they pay their school fees, although there's no school? And that didn't happen. In fact, some of them even paid and stood in for some of the other parents who lost their jobs and who couldn't quite make ends meet at the time. And they were supporting one another, and which meant that we must be one of the only, I'm not talking about government schools, we must be one of the only private schools in our region who were able to continue to pay all our staff their full salaries for the entire duration of the hard lockdown, which for us was just a godly thing. You know, Brett, that so often miracles happen because other people are also hearing God's voice.
Yes.
They being obedient, and the end result is you being on the receiving end, and you know. So it's God working through His people to confirm that He's in this thing with you, that He's not left you, and that He's on your side.
It's interesting how we often want a miracle outside of community. Right. We get out of community, we don't have community, we don't invest in community, and then we expect God to airdrop things from heaven. But often His mechanism for providing is through a community that's been built in normal times. Very interesting.
I think the whole, you know, to understand my take on miracles, to understand miracles, you cannot talk about miracles without talking about obedience. I'm not talking about miracles on the early phases of the conversion type miracles. I mean, they are in a different category altogether. Then God just intervenes. It's full on grace at play, and we don't understand. That's the mysterious side of God. But the moment we start doing stuff because we believe this is what we've heard from God, the miracle almost takes in a different place. It performs a different role, and that's certainly been the case with us. And I think I'm way more bold. It's a dangerous word to use, but I'm way more bold with regards to our calling and our purpose. Because of marketplace miracles, God affirming and supporting, and you know, it's like David before he met up with Goliath. I mean, there was a bear and there was a lion. You see, so those kind of prepared him. It like pepped him up. You know, so when Goliath came, he was a man of inner strength. Something of that happened in our circles because of marketplace miracles. And the beauty is, it doesn't just affect me. It pumps up the expectancy, the expectations of who God is and what He can deliver on. Of everybody understands. We go big on those around here. If God does something like that, a couple of weeks ago, again, it was a cash flow situation. We were in lockdown. We just come out of lockdown. There was no business, no international travel. The hospitality industry was going through a horrid time. And as in from nowhere, we received two substantial checks. I mean, substantial amounts of money from insurance, which we weren't expecting, and that amount that allowed us to continue and to if nothing else, it really reminded us that we're not alone.
That's a wonderful thing, and I think when we read in the book of Matthew, for example, go into all the world, make disciples of all nations, and these signs will follow those who believe, and it's raising the dead or praying for the sick and so forth, which is fine, but we don't think about a check in the mail for cash flow, an insurance payout, something happening on a property lease or a contract, whatever. And we just need to expand our concept of what God's allowed to do. It's not just bringing people to quote-unquote salvation, but it goes way beyond that. And so expanding the categories and then keeping your eyes open.
We have to, and I think, again, I have to emphasize that don't go looking for, they'll come looking for you, provided you are looking for God. And for God's purposes for your life. And you are pounding on heaven's door for His wisdom and His direction, and sometimes for Him to save you. Then miracles have an interesting way of following.
It's an interesting summary. Don't go looking for miracles, go looking for God, and the miracles will look for you. That's a great summary. Danny, thank you so much for sharing your story. It's going to be an encouragement, and once again, good to be with you here in South Africa at your lovely place. If people want to find out about this place, how do they do that?
Just Google De Olijfboom.
De Olijfboom, which is the olive tree.
That's right.
So they shouldn't Google the olive tree.
No, that won't get them anywhere.
De Olijfboom in Paarl, P-A-A-R-L, South Africa, and you'll find it's a lovely venue. We've done a number of executive intensives here that you've hosted, and of course always good to see what God's doing with you in Garita and your household of industries. All of those.
Thank you, Brett. It's a delight for us to have you in our midst and to share our stories. Thank you.
We've shared your stories around the world. We have some of them on video, but it's always good to get it straight from the horse's mouth. And that wasn't a once-off. That happened 20 years ago. There's the ongoing faithfulness of God. And so I just keep encouraging people in the marketplace to expect the miraculous. Don't close your eyes to the miraculous. Don't check the miraculous at the door when you go into the workplace and say, God's given me a brain, therefore I don't need to pray about this. But to involve God in every aspect of what you're doing, and expect God to underline what you do with signs and wonders, because it's a sign for the unbelievers. It's not just for you. It's like, we can see God's favor on the Olijfboom. Therefore God is not Danny is amazing, or this is a place of miracles. God is good, He's faithful to His people.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brett.
Okay.